Hey there guys and gals, thanks for checking out Hunt, Shoot, Live. Today I want to show you how to do your own European mount with your big trophy that you kill this deer season. What I've got here is a deer head that my buddy Matt has given me to fix for him. You can see it's a great deer, but he's cut it off just at the base of the skull. You can see that I'm outside at my grill, my gas grill. I got this big pot. You do not have to pay $100 for one of those things, the buck boiler or whatever. You can go to Walmart and get one of these for 25 bucks and it works just fine. What I'm gonna do, I've got it turned on high. I've got it on the burner and I've got it turned on high. I'm gonna let it boil down, and it's gonna have to soften some of this stuff up. As it softens, I'll actually let it boil for probably about 4 hours, just coming and adding water as I need to. I'm actually going to add a little bit more water so it'll pull on up to here. Boil it for probably about 4 hours. Come out and cut the meat and stuff off. It should come off really easy at that point. Then I'll put it back in for maybe another hour or two, and then we move on to the next step. Alright, I've had to move it inside, much to my wife's dismay, because it's cold and windy outside. But in the process of moving it, I let it boil for probably 3 or 4 hours outside. You can see that a lot of the meat already has easily fell right off. So now that it's inside, I'll probably let it boil for another 2 or 3 hours or so, and then get to move on to the second step. Of course, step 1 being boil, and step 2 will be get the meat off. Alright, step 2, I've let the head boil. Just boil the crap out of it until the meat just starts to fall off. I ain't had to cut anything. You just boil it until the meat is falling off. You can peel it off with your hand. Total time probably 4 or 5 hours of boiling it. Now, if you have a pressure washer, you can use a pressure washer. I don't, so I'm here at the local car wash, and I'm going to use this bad boy to spray it off and knock some of the extra meat off before we put it in and boil it one last time. Alright, so it's looking much better. Sprayed off with the pressure washer. It really helps to get the pressure washer and put it in the brain cavity there. And now we're ready to get it on back home and boil it. I'm going to boil it one last time in some peroxide. Alright, we have took it, pressure washed it. Now we are back boiling it one last time. During this last boil, I'm going to put some peroxide in it. Not a whole lot, just maybe a half a cup to a cup, just to kind of start the whitening process. And we'll do a little more with peroxide later. Alright, so the next step in the process is let it sit outside and dry for just a couple days, after spraying it off. I've already done that. It's looking pretty good, but you can see it's got just a couple pieces of flesh and tissue here and there. So what I'm actually going to do now is, since it's dried a little bit, I've got me some pliers that are pretty long, or if you've got some really long tweezers, just stick back in the nasal cavity, pull some of the extra stuff out. I'll probably take a knife and scrape some of this type of stuff off of it before we move on to the next step. Alright, so I got my skull scraped clean a little bit, got some of the extra stuff off of it. Now what I'm going to do is take some peroxide and some paper towels. I've got it just laid out here on my desk, and it's going to be somewhere where it's going to be out of the way for about 24 hours. And I just got a paper towel laid over it right here. I'm going to take some of the peroxide and just sort of pour it on it a little bit, and take some time and do that all over it until it kind of sticks down on it. Add a couple more paper towels so it covers all of the skull, and just keep putting some peroxide on it. And I'll come back and check on it and re-wet it about every 5 or 6 hours. You can see how it kind of starts to form to the skull. That's exactly what we want. That way that peroxide will just hold to it. And we should end up with a nice pretty skull after about 24 hours. Alright, time for the final step in the DIY Euro mount. I've had it, I did about 24 hours, adding peroxide to the paper towel every so often just to kind of keep it wet. You can see it comes out looking like a really nice bleached skull. The next thing that you're going to want to do, got a drill. I'm going to use a screw because ultimately what I'm going to do with this, I've got this plaque, ordered from Amazon, delivered right to your house. What I'm going to do is we're going to mount the skull directly to it. So you'll want a 2.5 or 3 inch screw. And you'll want a drill bit that is just a little bit smaller than the screw is, because what you're going to do, right here's the hole in the skull cavity, into the brain cavity. So what we want to do is come down just below that, and I'm going to drill a hole into it. Alright, so I got my hole drilled through the back of the skull. I got my plaque opened up. You can see this is just a plain wooden plaque. What I'm going to do with it is I'm going to mount the skull on the plaque just like that, and I've drilled a hole in the back of the skull so that I can put my screw right straight through this plaque and into the skull, and then it'll hold the skull right on the plaque, and you won't ever even be able to see, you won't be able to see the screw at all. So now I'm just going to line it up, get the skull where I want it, and mark that. Mark it where my hole in my skull is on this plaque. Then I'll take it off, pre-drill my hole through the plaque, and then put this back on, put the screw through it and tighten it up, and then we'll be ready to put it on the wall. So I marked where the hole needs to be. What I'm going to do now is measure and center it up and make sure that I've got the skull centered up really good. Okay, got my hole drilled. Put my screw in through the back. I'm going to let it stick out in the front just a little bit so I can easily get it into the skull. Line the skull up with the hole in the skull up with the screw. Need it to come forward a little bit more. Beautiful. Okay, so now I've got that. I'm going to put my mounting hardware on the back, and we'll get it on the wall and see what it looks like. So there you go. That's my do-it-yourself European deer skull mount. There's the perspective from a little further back with some other stuff. Looks really good. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you get to put this to use yourself this year with several trophies that you've got through this deer season. Thanks for checking out Hunt, Shoot, Live. Be sure to like and share and subscribe. We'll see you next time.